My name is Nicole Bedell, and I'm 30 years old. If you looked at my life from the outside, you'd probably say I'm doing well. I live in a small apartment in Nebraska, work at a stable insurance firm, and after 8 years of grinding, I finally made it to a senior position. The pay is solid, my boss likes me, and my coworkers even say I'm the dependable one. But what no one knows, what I've hidden for years, is that a big part of every paycheck I earn doesn't belong to me. Every month, a large chunk vanishes straight into my parents' account. It started as helping with bills. That's what Mom said when she asked me to set up the joint account years ago. Just utilities, honey, we'll handle the rest. But somehow utilities became car insurance, then home repairs, then Jessica needs braces, then Jenna wants piano lessons. And every time I tried to protest, the same guilt-laced words came back. You're the successful one, Nicole. You have a good job. You can help. I wish I could say I didn't fall for it, but I did. Every single time. My best friend Sophie, who's been with me since college, has been calling me out for years. She's a lawyer, sharp, fearless, allergic to manipulation. I love her, but I hate how often she's right. Nicole. She told me once over coffee, "You're not supporting your parents. You're paying rent for their approval." I laughed it off. Said she was exaggerating, said family is complicated, but her words stuck with me. At night, when I came home to my dim little apartment with its flickering hallway light and mismatched furniture, I'd sometimes sit at the kitchen table, scrolling through old childhood photos. In the early ones before Jenna was born, I was always in the center, Mom's arm around me, Dad smiling proudly. Then around my 12th birthday, things shifted. Suddenly, every photo had baby Jenna in the spotlight, and I was somewhere in the background, blurred or cropped. I used to think I was imagining it, but when I got my first job at 14 bagging groceries to buy my own school supplies, I realized something had changed. Jenna became the sun, and we were all expected to orbit around her. She got everything she wanted: designer clothes, private lessons, a new phone every year. I, on the other hand, worked double shifts to afford college applications, only to have my parents brag about Jenna's piano recitals instead. And I let them. I told myself I was being a good daughter, the mature one. That love had to be earned through sacrifice. When I finally moved out at 23, I thought things would get better, but my parents found ways to pull me back. Mom would call late at night, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, the electricity bill is overdue. Could you just help out this once?" Once became always. Sophie saw through it before I did. "They're conditioning you," she said bluntly one night. "They give Jenna affection. They give you responsibility. And you're addicted to both." I snapped at her for that. I told her she didn't understand family, but deep down I knew she did. Last month, Jenna turned 18. She's finishing high school now and preparing for prom, her biggest life event to date, apparently. She's beautiful, spoiled, and completely unaware of how money works. She called me one afternoon while I was still at work. "Nicole," she said, "not even a hello, I need you to pay for my prom. Dress shoes, makeup, everything." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "I can't," I told her. "I just paid rent and my car insurance. I'm tight this month." She sighed, the kind of dramatic sigh that meant I'd disappointed her. "Nicole, you make good money. You can afford it." "I can't, Jenna." She hung up without another word. 2 hours later, Mom called. No hello either, just straight into orders. "Nicole, your sister needs help with prom." "Pay for it." I told her I don't have the money right now. "You have a good job. Take it from savings." "I can't just pull money out of thin air, Mom. Then use the family account." "There's money there." I froze. The family account. I'd been depositing money there for 7 years. 7. "Why don't you use that?" I asked slowly. Mom hesitated. "Then, that's for other things. We have plans for it." "What plans?" "That's not your concern. Just help your sister." Something in her tone, sharp, entitled, hit a nerve. My patience snapped. "If there's money in that account, use it. I'm not giving you more right now. Nicole, don't be selfish." "I'm not being selfish. I'm setting boundaries." And before she could guilt me again, I hung up. The moment I did, my chest tightened. My hands were shaking. I sat there staring at my phone, replaying her words. Selfish. Don't be selfish. That word had followed me my entire life. Every time I said no, every time I wanted something for myself, I was selfish. I tried to shake it off, but the guilt clawed back in. By the next morning, I was already considering sending some money anyway. Jenna only had one prom right, but before I could text her, something made me pause. Maybe instinct, maybe exhaustion. I opened her social media page, curiosity mostly, and there she was. A brand new outfit, designer jeans, a shiny handbag I recognized from an influencer ad, piles of shopping bags around her feet, the caption shopping day, #prom ready, #blessed. I stared at the photo for a long time. My heart sank, then hardened. Prom ready with what money? I opened my banking app, something I'd done 1,000 times before. My balance seemed lower than expected, but I couldn't place why. I started scrolling through my transaction history. That's when I noticed tiny deductions labeled as commission coverage or service adjustment. $40 here, $60 there, sometimes $120. I didn't remember signing up for anything like that. I scrolled further back months, then years. The pattern was relentless. Dozens of small charges, regular as clockwork, hidden in plain sight. At first, I thought it was some kind of bank error, but the more I scrolled, the colder I felt. Each entry had one thing in common. They all appeared around the same time my paycheck hit my account. Every single month. I sat there staring at my screen as my stomach twisted. Something was wrong, very wrong. I replayed Mom's voice in my head. Use the family account. That account I'd been pouring money into. That account she didn't want to use. I opened the joint account next. My breath caught. The balance was lower than it should have been. Much lower. I clicked on transaction history. A long list of transfers scrolled down the screen, none of which I recognized. Some labeled as investment transfer, others as debt recovery. All moving money out, slowly but steadily. And that's when it hit me. These weren't fees. They were withdrawals. Someone was siphoning my money. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could barely hear anything over the sound of my own heartbeat. I thought about my parents, my accountant, the people who had access to that joint account. And in that moment, one thought surfaced so quiet it scared me. What if it's them? I swallowed hard and grabbed my phone. There was only one person I could trust with this. I called Sophie. She picked up on the second ring. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Sophie?" I said, my voice trembling. "I think someone's stealing from me." There was a pause, then her tone turned razor sharp. "Don't touch anything. I'm coming over right now." I looked at my phone screen one more time. The endless list of transactions, the numbers draining away like blood from an open wound, and whispered to no one. Something's been draining my life for years, and I never even noticed. Sophie arrived 20 minutes later, still in her work suit, heels clicking against my hallway floor like the ticking of a clock. She had that expression she wears when she's in lawyer mode. Sharp eyes, lips pressed into a thin line, already calculating. "Show me," she said the moment she set her purse down. I handed her my laptop and pulled up the bank portal. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sophie's nails tapped against the keys as she scanned through transaction after transaction. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional click, click, click as she moved between tabs. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "I don't know," I whispered. "Years, maybe I never noticed before." She didn't respond right away. I watched her face tighten as she read eyes flicking rapidly. "These aren't service fees, Nicole. These are mass transfers. Whoever's doing this knows how to hide it." A chill crept up my neck. "Transfers to where?" She turned the laptop toward me. "The joint account." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I'm the one transferring money into that account. It's supposed to stay there for utilities and loans. Who else has access to it?" "My parents and our accountant, Mr. Graham. My dad said it was easier if Graham handled everything." Sophie leaned back slowly. "You gave him access to your account." "Not directly, just to the joint one. My dad said it was necessary for bookkeeping." Her tone sharpened. "Bookkeeping my ass. Nicole, this guy's been using that access to get into your personal accounts too, probably with permission from your father." I blinked at her numb. "You're saying my dad let him do this?" She sighed. "Let's not jump to conclusions yet. But I've seen this pattern before, trust fund leaks, disguised transfers, slow siphoning. Whoever set this up wanted to make sure you never noticed." I slumped onto the couch. The room felt like it was closing in on me. My parents, the people I'd sent money to every month, the people I'd defended to everyone, even to Sophie. No, I couldn't believe it. They might guilt-trip me, yes, but steal from me. That was something else entirely. "It could be the accountant," I said weakly. "Maybe he's the one doing it." Maybe Sophie replied, "But your mom's the one who didn't want to use the family account money for Jenna's prom, right?" "Yeah." Then she knew that money wasn't there. Think about it. Her words hit me like a slap. I stood up, pacing across the living room, my fingers tangling in my hair. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't. Nicole Sophie cut in, her voice firm. You've spent years believing they wouldn't. But we both know they've been taking advantage of you since college. This is just the next level. I stopped pacing. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window, small, tired, and scared. I want to believe you're wrong, I whispered. Sophie's tone softened. Then let's prove it. She pulled her laptop closer and began cross-checking routing numbers, lining up every withdrawal with the dates of my salary deposits. I watched silent as the puzzle came together piece by piece. It was like watching a movie about someone else's life, only the victim was me. Every month, like clockwork, right after my paycheck landed, someone withdrew fees from my personal account, moved them to a shadow account, and then into the joint family one. The first entry was 7 years ago, right after my dad had hired Mr. Graham. I felt my stomach twist. 7 years of work. 7 years of living paycheck to paycheck, thinking I was just bad at saving. 7 years of guilt every time Sophie offered to help me check my finances. Do you see it now? Sophie asked quietly. I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. She opened another window and started drafting notes. I'll need access to your email, your accountant's correspondence, and the bank statements from the joint account. And Nicole, do not contact your parents. Not yet. I need to ask them. No, she said sharply. If you tip them off, they'll close everything before we can trace it. You let me handle this. I sank back into the couch, my body heavy, my heart hammering. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my parents. The night stretched on. The wine Sophie brought stayed untouched. I sat there watching her type, the bluish glow from the screen casting shadows across her determined face. Do you remember, she said after a while, when we used to joke about you paying their mortgage one day? I let out a hollow laugh. Guess it wasn't a joke after all. She gave me a look of sympathy, mixed with restrained anger. You always thought giving them money would make them proud. But they were never proud, were they? No, I whispered, just demanding. Sophie closed the laptop and finally poured herself a glass of wine. She didn't drink it, just swirled it slowly. I'll spend the next few days digging. I'll trace every cent. Once I know who's behind this, you'll have to decide what you want to do. What do you mean? If it's your parents, and I'm 90% sure it is, you'll have to choose between pressing charges or walking away. I stared at her. They're still my family. She met my eyes. And they're thieves, Nicole. Both can be true. The words hit harder than I expected. I looked away, blinking back tears. Sophie gathered her things, stood, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Try to sleep. I'll call you when I have something. When she left, the apartment felt colder. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from my laptop screen, still showing the last transaction on my account commission coverage. $58.92. I hovered over it with my cursor, like if I stared long enough, the numbers would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and whispered to the empty room. I spent years thinking love was expensive. I just didn't realize how high the price really was. 3 days later, Sophie called. Her voice was calm but heavy. Nicole, she said, come into my office now. When I arrived, she had papers spread across her desk, rows of printouts, highlighted numbers, account transfers, signatures. She looked up. It's them. Your parents. With help from your accountant. I stared at the documents. How much? Her answer came out flat. $85,000. For a long time I didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there as the weight of 7 years crashed down on me. When I finally found my voice, it came out as a whisper, $85,000, stolen by the people who gave me life. I didn't go home after Sophie told me. I couldn't. I drove around the city until dusk bled into night headlights, smearing through my tears. I stopped at a gas station at the edge of town and sat there, engine idling, trying to convince myself this was all some mistake. But the papers Sophie had shown me were burned into my mind, each transaction, each forged authorization, each lie. It wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal. By the time I made it back to my apartment, the sky had opened up. Rain hammered against my windshield, and I sat in the driveway for almost 20 minutes before I could breathe again. When I walked inside, Sophie was waiting. She had that look she gets before going into a courtroom, focused, merciless. You ready? She asked. No, I said truthfully. But we're going anyway. She nodded once, grabbed the folder of evidence, and handed me an umbrella. Then we'll do it scared. The drive to my parents' house felt endless. The rain had turned the streets into mirrors, and every red light felt like the world was daring me to turn back. I could see the glow of their porch light from halfway down the block, a warm, familiar light that once meant safety. Tonight, it felt like a trap. My dad opened the door before we even knocked. He looked surprised to see me, then wary when he noticed Sophie beside me. Nicole, he said, frowning. It's late. What's this about? We need to talk, I said. All of us. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, irritation, but he stepped aside. Mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself while stirring a pot on the stove. The smell of soup filled the room, comforting and cruel at the same time. She looked up and smiled. Sweetheart. You didn't say you were coming. Her smile faltered when she saw Sophie. Oh, hello. Sophie set her briefcase on the table and opened it with a click. Mrs. Bedell. Mr. Bedell, we have something to discuss regarding your daughter's finances. My dad stiffened. This sounds like an accusation. It's not an accusation, Sophie replied evenly. It's evidence. I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward them. My hands were trembling, but my voice wasn't. I know about the money, the transfers, the fake fees. Mom's smile froze. What are you talking about? Don't, I said quietly. Please don't pretend. I have bank statements, account histories, everything. It's all here. My dad's face went red. You have no right to come in here accusing us of theft. I have every right, I shot back. It's my money. He slammed his hand on the table. You make good money, Nicole. You have a responsibility to this family. We raised you. We gave you everything. Everything. The word cracked out of me like a laugh. You stopped giving me anything the day Jenna was born. I've been buying your love ever since. Mom's eyes flashed. That's not fair. We did what we had to do. You stole from me, I said. You made me believe I was broke for years. Do you know what that did to me? Sophie unfolded a few pages and spoke her voice like a blade. These transactions are disguised transfers. Mr. Graham, your accountant, has been moving funds from Nicole's accounts into yours for 7 years. We have proof he took a cut for himself. That's financial fraud, conspiracy, and theft. My mother's face drained of color. You're exaggerating. We were just moving money around. For what Sophie demanded. Mom's lips trembled. For the family. For Jenna. That name hung in the air like poison. I took a step back. You mean you stole from me so Jenna could have designer clothes and private lessons? My father's jaw clenched. You wouldn't understand. We had debts obligations. Obligations you created, I shouted. Vacations, gifts, tuition for things she didn't even finish. You used me as a wallet. A door creaked upstairs. Jenna's voice floated down groggy and annoyed. What's going on? She appeared at the top of the stairs in silk pajamas, her phone still in hand. When she saw the scene papers, my shaking hands, Sophie's fierce stare, her expression soured. Ugh, seriously, are you fighting again? I'm trying to talk to the event planner. Event planner. Prom. I let out a bitter laugh that startled even me. Did you have fun shopping, Jenna? I asked, voice breaking. Did you enjoy buying new clothes with my stolen money? She blinked confused, then looked to our parents. What is she talking about? My dad snapped, Go back to your room. No, I said, stepping closer. Let her hear it. Let her see what her perfect parents really are. Nicole, Mom hissed. Enough. I ignored her. You told me I was selfish for saying no to you. You told me family meant sacrifice. But all this time you were bleeding me dry. And for what? To keep pretending we were something we're not. My father's voice rose. We did it for her. She deserved a good life better than what we had. And I didn't. I yelled. I was your daughter too. For a moment, nobody spoke. The rain outside softened, replaced by the faint sound of wind rattling the windows. Then Sophie broke the silence. Mr. and Mrs. Bedell, we can handle this 2 ways. Either you cooperate and return what's left of the funds, or we take this to the police. My mother's face hardened. You wouldn't do that to your own family. Sophie looked at me. Would you? The question hung between us like a knife. I stared at my parents, their familiar faces now warped by greed, fear, and pride, and I realized something inside me had snapped long before tonight. I don't know what kind of family this is anymore, I said quietly, but I'm done being part of it. I turned, grabbed the folder, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Mom start to cry. Dad muttering curses under his breath, Jenna sighing, like this was just another inconvenience. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was cold and sharp. Sophie followed close behind, silent, until we reached the car. Once we were inside, she looked at me. You okay? No, I said, staring out the window at the glowing house I'd helped pay for. But I will be. She started the engine, and as the car pulled away, I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, leaving felt like survival. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat on my couch with the folder on the coffee table, staring at it like it might start screaming. My phone buzzed over and over, Mom, Dad, even Jenna. I didn't answer. Every vibration felt like a ghost knocking on the door. Sophie stayed the night. She didn't say much, She just worked on her laptop at my kitchen counter, occasionally glancing at me to make sure I hadn't fallen apart completely. Around 2 a.m., I finally spoke. I feel stupid. Sophie didn't look up. You're not stupid. You trusted the people who were supposed to love you. I should have seen it sooner. All the signs were there. The guilt trips, the sudden money problems, the way Mom changed the subject every time I asked about the family account. Sophie closed her laptop and came to sit beside me. Nicole, people like your parents. They train you not to question them. They make you feel like doing less is betrayal. That's not love. That's control. Her words hit something raw inside me. Do you think they ever loved me? She sighed. I think they loved what you could give them. I stared at the folder again. I thought helping them would make them proud. I thought if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. And did they? I shook my head, tears finally spilling. No, they never did. By morning, I'd made a decision. The next day, Sophie and I drove to the bank. I remember the smell of rain still lingering in the air, the way the sky looked washed out and exhausted like me. The banker, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, smiled politely as we sat down. How can I help you today? Sophie handled most of the talking. My client needs to revoke all shared access from this account and transfer her funds to a new institution. The woman blinked, clearly surprised by the sharpness in Sophie's tone, but she nodded and began typing. Nicole, she said gently, are you sure about this? This will permanently remove your parents' authorization. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. Yes, I'm sure. Click. One sound, and 7 years of submission ended. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed my hand under the desk. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tears hit the paperwork. When it was done, the banker printed out the new account details. I signed the final form, my hand trembling. As we stood to leave, I looked around the quiet lobby, the glass walls, the soft hum of printers, the muted light filtering through rain-streaked windows, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, control. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was something close. Later that afternoon, we went to my apartment to start the next step. Sophie helped me create new passwords, move my savings cancel authorizations. She was meticulous, efficient, like she was dismantling a bomb. When she finished, she exhaled deeply. Okay, they can't touch a dime now. I sat on the edge of my couch, numb. What happens if they try? They'll hit a wall. And if they try anything else, if they harass you or use your personal info, we press charges. I nodded, but a knot formed in my stomach. I don't want to ruin their lives. Sophie's eyes softened. They already ruined pieces of yours. That night, I made tea. I didn't drink and sat by the window watching the rain start again. My reflection in the glass looked older somehow, like I'd aged years in 2 days. My phone lit up again. Mom. Her voicemail came through seconds later. Nicole, please stop doing this. You're breaking this family apart. We needed help, that's all. Don't let that woman, your friend, turn you against us. You'll regret this one day. Her voice cracked at the end, and I almost called her back. Almost. But then I remembered her face at the table last night, the anger, the denial, the way she'd said, you should be contributing more. I set my phone face down and whispered to myself, no more. Over the next week, I tried to return to normal life. Work, coffee runs, emails. But normal didn't feel normal anymore. Every little thing reminded me of them. A woman at the grocery store arguing with her teenage daughter made my chest ache. A family laughing together in a cafe made me nauseous. Sophie called daily, checking in. You doing okay? Define okay, I'd reply, forcing a laugh. Sometimes, when I couldn't sleep, I'd stare at the ceiling and think about my childhood, about how my father used to call me his little helper, about how my mother would smile proudly when I brought home good grades, but only if Jenna wasn't in the room. I'd thought those things meant love. Now I realized they were conditioning. A week later, Sophie showed up with pizza and a serious look on her face. You need to hear this, she said, setting down her phone. Your accountant, Mr. Graham, emptied his office. He's gone. My stomach twisted. Gone as in disappeared. He withdrew a big chunk from the family account the day after our confrontation. Probably realized we were on to him. So he ran. Yep, and he took what was left. I let out a hollow laugh. Perfect. Even the leech abandoned them. Sophie smirked slightly. Small blessings. Without him, they can't touch your finances anymore. For a second, I felt relief. Then guilt rushed in to fill its place. They'll have nothing now. Sophie arched a brow. They had you for 7 years. They'll survive. I wanted to believe her. That night, I deleted all their numbers. Every voicemail. Every email. But when I lay down, the silence was deafening. For 30 years, my parents had been my constant background noise. Their demands, their needs, their approval. Now there was nothing. And in that silence, a strange thought came to me. Freedom doesn't always feel like peace. Sometimes it feels like loss. I stared into the dark until morning, whispering to myself, "You did the right thing." But it didn't feel right yet. Not yet. It had been 3 quiet weeks. Too quiet. I'd started sleeping again, though. Not well. The nightmares always ended the same way, me back in my parents' kitchen, holding those bank papers, while they smiled like nothing was wrong. I'd wake up shaking, reach for my phone, and remind myself they couldn't reach me anymore. Or so I thought. One Monday morning, as I was heading to a meeting, my boss, Mr. Daniels, called me into his office. His tone was neutral, but his eyes weren't. "Nicole," he said, folding his hands, "we received a rather serious complaint." My stomach dropped. A complaint. He slid a folder across his desk. I opened it. It was a letter, formal, accusatory, dripping with rehearsed outrage. The words blurred as I read, "We believe our daughter, an employee of your company, has mishandled our family's insurance policy and misused confidential information for personal financial gain." I froze. What is this?" Mr. Daniels sighed. "It's from your parents." For a second, the world tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. "They're lying," I whispered. He nodded gently. "I figured. But legal has to investigate. I'm sorry." By the time I got to Sophie's office, my hands were trembling so badly, I dropped my phone twice in the elevator. She took one look at me and said, "They've done something, haven't they?" I threw the letter onto her desk. "They're trying to get me fired." Sophie read it, her face darkening. Then she laughed a sharp, humorless sound. "Wow, they're desperate. Desperate enough to ruin my career." "Relax," she said, already booting up her computer. "They just handed us another weapon." "What do you mean?" She started typing furiously. "Every word of this letter is a lie. They're accusing you of professional misconduct. That's defamation. And since we've got proof they've stolen from you, if they push this, we countersue." I sank into the chair, burying my face in my hands. I can't believe this. They're really trying to destroy me. Sophie's voice softened. "Nicole, this is what abusers do when they lose control. They attack what you value most." "My job," I said bitterly, "because it's the one thing I built without them." She nodded. "Exactly." For the next week, Sophie worked nonstop. She collected every email I'd ever exchanged with my parents about their policy, every document signed, every proof that I'd acted by the book. Her desk became a fortress of folders and sticky notes. Meanwhile, I kept my head down at work. Mr. Daniels assured me the investigation was routine, but I could feel the whispers. People looked at me differently. My stomach was in knots all the time. Then one night around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. "Check your inbox," she said. "I sent something." I opened the file she'd attached. It was a copy of an email chain, my parents confirming their understanding of the policy, thanking me for my help. Dated and signed. Sophie's voice came through the phone, calm and deadly. "This alone will bury their complaint, but I'm not done." The next day, she sent everything. The signed forms, the emails, even a notarized letter from the accountant confirming my compliance straight to their lawyer. And just for good measure, she attached one final note. "If your clients wish to pursue this claim, we are fully prepared to countersue for harassment and theft of $85,000, supported by documented bank evidence and witness statements." 2 days later, the complaint vanished. No apology, no explanation, just silence. But silence doesn't always mean peace. A few nights later, as I walked up to my apartment door, I noticed a shadow by the stairwell. Someone was there, watching. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. The figure stepped into the light. My heart froze. Mom. She looked smaller somehow, pale. Her hands were clasped tight around her purse strap. "Please don't call the police," she said softly. "I just want to talk." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part, the part that still remembered her brushing my hair before school, couldn't move. I sighed. 2 minutes. She nodded and stepped inside. The air between us was thick with years of unspoken things. "Nicole," she started, "your father's furious. We're struggling. You cut us off and everything's falling apart." I crossed my arms. "You brought that on yourselves." Her eyes welled up. "We didn't mean for it to go so far. We needed help. You've always been so capable, and I cut her off. "Stop. Stop acting like this was survival. It was greed. You didn't need my money, you wanted control." She flinched. "That's not true." "It is," I said quietly, "and you know it." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, almost in a whisper, "Your father blames me. He says I pushed him to it. But we just wanted to keep the family together." I shook my head. Families don't keep each other through theft and lies. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "We made mistakes, Nicole. Please. Can't we start over? I took a deep breath. You didn't just take my money. You took my trust. You made me think love was something I had to earn. She covered her mouth with a trembling hand, sobbing quietly. I can't start over, I said. Not with people who see me as a bank account. She reached for me. I stepped back. For the first time, she looked truly broken. She turned toward the door slowly. You'll regret this one day. No, I said, my voice steady. For the first time, I won't. She left without another word. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the locked door, half expecting another knock. None came. When I told Sophie the next morning, she sighed. They'll try guilt, then shame, then fear. It's all the same trap, just different disguises. I nodded, feeling something inside me shift. Then I'm done being caught. Good, she said, because they've just played their last card. I believed her, but part of me knew families like mine never stop until they lose everything. And I had a feeling they were about to. 2 months passed before I heard about the bankruptcy. It came from my cousin Lila, a quiet woman who rarely called unless something serious had happened. When I saw her name on my screen, my stomach twisted. Nicole, she said, her voice hesitant. I thought you should know. Your parents filed for bankruptcy last week. I stared out the window at the morning sunlight spilling across my apartment floor. I see, I said finally. I guess, after you cut them off, they couldn't keep up with the debts. The accountant's gone, the house is on the market. Jenna's working now at some clothing boutique downtown. I almost smiled. Jenna's working. Yeah, folding shirts, I think. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear a distant city bus honking outside, the low hum of life moving on. Are you okay? Lila asked softly. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. I'm fine, Lila. Really. And for the first time, I meant it. That night, I sat in my living room, the same place where Sophie had once pored over my stolen finances. But everything felt different now. The air was lighter. The space, small, mismatched, imperfect, felt like mine for the first time. I opened my banking app and stared at the balance. It wasn't huge, but it was growing. No mysterious deductions, no disguised fees. Just my money. Safe. I ran my thumb across the screen and whispered, You're finally free. Therapy helped. I'd started seeing Dr. Anders 2 months ago at Sophie's gentle insistence. The first session, I sat in silence for 10 minutes before managing to say, I don't know how to stop feeling guilty. He smiled kindly. That's normal, Nicole. You spent your life believing love must be earned. Guilt is the echo of that belief. Over time, I learned how to recognize those echoes. The pang in my chest when I ignored my mom's voicemails. The guilt when I passed by families laughing in restaurants. The ache when I saw siblings teasing each other in grocery aisles. It took months, but the ache began to fade. Dr. Anders once said something that stayed with me. You can forgive someone without reopening the door you closed. So I forgave them, quietly, alone, without ever letting them know. A year after everything unraveled, I moved into a new apartment, a sunny open space with real furniture, not the hand-me-downs I'd been clinging to. I invited Sophie over for dinner to celebrate. She brought wine and that proud, teasing smile of hers. You did it, she said, raising her glass. You finally built a life that's yours. I laughed softly. Took me 30 years. Hey, late's better than never. We ate on my new balcony, city lights glittering below us. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy this time, it was peaceful. You know, Sophie said after a sip of wine, your parents reached out again last month. Through me. I blinked. What? Just an email. They wanted me to tell you they're sorry, that they want to make things right. I looked down at my glass. Did they mention the money? No. Then it's not an apology. She nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I smiled faintly. Thank you for not telling me sooner. I figured you didn't need the noise. We sat there for a while, listening to the hum of traffic and the soft clink of glasses. Finally, Sophie asked, Do you ever miss them? I thought about it. About Sunday dinners filled with laughter that wasn't real, about birthdays I paid for, but wasn't celebrated at, about a childhood where I learned that love was currency. I miss the idea of them, I said quietly. The family I thought I had, not the one I actually did. Sophie nodded, her expression soft. That's fair. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Real paper, handwritten, no return address, but the slanted cursive was unmistakable. My mother's. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Nicole, we're sorry for how things went. We were desperate. We made mistakes. Your father's health isn't good, and we're not doing well. I hope someday you can forgive us and come home. You're still our daughter. Love, Mom. I read it twice. Nowhere did she mention the theft. Nowhere did she admit what they'd done. It was guilt wrapped in nostalgia, a plea without accountability. I folded it neatly and dropped it into the trash. For once, I didn't cry. A month later, Sophie and I booked our long-promised vacation. 2 weeks in Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, the places I used to daydream about while wiring money home. When the plane lifted off the runway, I looked out the window and whispered goodbye. Not to Nebraska, not even to my family, but to the version of me that believed love had to be paid for. It's funny, freedom doesn't look like fireworks or champagne. Sometimes it looks like a woman sitting on her own couch in her own apartment, breathing in peace for the first time in years. I'm 31 now. My life isn't perfect, just quiet, honest mine. Some nights I catch my reflection in the window and see the girl I used to be, scared, obedient, desperate for approval. I smile at her softly and whisper, "You're safe now." And I mean it, because I stopped being the daughter who paid for love and started being the woman who finally understood it.